Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Existential Side Quest. I'm Jenna,
I'm Kimber.
and today we're going to be talking about healing journeys and are we really on a healing journey or not?
Yes, like the can healing be performative, right?
Exactly. And in our society, there is a lot of pressure to have it all together or be evolved and be healed and share your story of how healed you are and how bad things used to be, not how bad they are necessarily now. So we're
hmm
kind of unpacking that today.
Yeah. So, and I think a lot of this kind of connects to this view that healing is linear. And so I'm interested if other people think if it's linear or not, but in my experience, healing is cyclical and or healing is different, if that makes sense. It's like you might be healing from the same thing, but how you're seeing it is from a different angle, or it's almost like grief in a way sometimes.
Yeah. Like the waves of grief, the waves of healing. It really is interesting to compare the two of them because when we talk about early grief or early healing, it's very constant or at least more constant. It's very intense. It's like when you first have a physical injury, you're tending to it. Like it's very much not healed for a while. And then, as life goes on, as the healing journey goes on, let's stick with the physical wound for a second, you might forget about it. You might think, oh, I'm completely healed. And then somewhere down the line, something comes along. Oh, I did this sport and it really started hurting this old injury, this old trauma. Yeah. So I like that, the cyclicalness of it.
Yeah. And I think that's where it's like your relationship with healing can should evolve. And it's like if you had a broken arm and then it's healed, maybe you do forget that you broke your arm when you're playing this other sport later. I think that there's the downfall is if you just for the rest of your life, you're always talking about that time you broke your arm and not trying things as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Jensen saying it's cyclical and also spiral. That's a really good word for it.
I like that. Because
Spiraling.
spiral to me has like a negative connotation.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think sometimes healing has this, it's almost like because you go deeper, I feel. It's like sometimes you have to tend to like the surface wound or the immediacy. And
Mm-hmm.
then it's like, then you can kind of unpack later. But that can be very off putting to some people. And so I feel like we can bypass. It's like, well, I've dealt with this or I should be over it now. And not really allowing us to, I'm not saying like a downward spiral where you're like falling through, but just it's almost like feeling that that's what it would feel like, and so maintaining a sense of control of like rushing to like I'm healed.
Yeah. Or like the availability of how deep you can go at a certain time. Like there's whether it's, our own development, our own brain's maturity, or just the transits or our access to how deeply something impacted us. Like maybe as a teenager, you didn't realize how much it impacted you, but then at 30 or 40 or 50, with that new depth of your own psyche, you recognize, oh, actually this impacted me on a much deeper level, and how that can it's almost confusing in a way when it's like, well, I totally felt at peace with that and now I don't. Well, maybe to this level you're at peace with it, but now you have this available and it's not. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of makes me think a lot of friends I know who experienced trauma in their childhood, they dealt with it and they've like worked through it, but once they became parents they had to kind of go through it again, and it's like things that they, because it's almost like now they're in the parent role, and so it was like reopening, and it doesn't mean that they didn't heal from it before, but it's like there's just another layer that's now having them revisit it. I do have a question for you. Why is there pressure to be evolved? What?
Well, yeah, I think it comes with the same pressure to stay busy and stay productive. And I think a lot of our society puts value on how much you are either creating for a different purpose or consuming because you have the means to consume. So we're in this like race of how much resource do I have? And inner resource we don't look to as a society, we don't value it as much as external resource. So maybe these healing journeys or taking space and relaxing or taking time for grief, taking time for trauma processing. It's like our society's almost saying like, that's a leisure activity. That's not something that's actually helping society along, which I don't believe. I think that's incorrect. It's
Right.
just more of a long game of helping.
I could see that. And I feel like, I mean, we're evolutionary astrologers too. And so the way we use astrology is all about evolution. But I think when we view evolution, we view it as one direction or and not necessarily a depth situation. Or I love Jensen's description of like an upward spiral where it's not just like a straight line, but it's more like we can get attached to what will this evolution look like and forget that there are external people and events in our lives and that and we are also human and that it's not about like it's not just like this destination you get to and then it's you've gotten your A+ and you're done.
Mm-hmm. We definitely prioritize the been there, done that of the healing journey too. And it's almost like saying like, yeah, that's in the past. Whether it's because
Say more about the been there, done that.
well, it reminds me of so I was a drug addict many moons ago, and I remember in rehab all of the counselors and therapists and stuff, they were people in recovery, and they would talk about, "Oh, I have decades in recovery," or "Oh, I have 12 years, I have this long," as if they're like, "Yep, that's very far behind me, and therefore I am equipped to actually give information on this," rather than being like, "Hey, I'm in the throes of this. I have intimate familiarity with the struggles, and I contextually more recently have intimate familiarity with it." Because sometimes when we get too far away from an experience, we can't truly relate to it anymore,
Yes.
not as deeply at least. Yeah.
Like
But I'm
that.
sure if one of the therapists came in and was like, "I relapsed last night," the rest of the staff would be like, "Oh, maybe you shouldn't be helping everyone else right now." So,
Yeah, it's a balance, right? Because it's like it's more knowing the relapse would maybe it's like should you be helping, but also it can be really comforting, not that you relapse, but like a that you struggle, like it's not just easy
yeah.
to like this takes work or it's like it's not that the effort does goes away
Mhm.
for someone who's like actively trying to like become sober.
Like, we put a lot of weight into having a mentor or somebody show us how to do something by example when it's something like watching Stephen Forrest interpret a chart. Like, that's incredible to watch. Well, why can't we get that same level of like, wow, there's so much depth of information in watching someone with years of recovery experience go through early recovery again? Like, there's
Mhm.
the way they're going to approach it has so much wisdom and value to it that like it's interesting that our society can't translate how that might be beneficial to actually see and watch, even though it is a hardship. It is it's nothing that people would generally be as, "Oh, look at my skill at early recovery," which is different than look at my skill at interpreting a birth chart.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. So I guess there's different stages of healing. So how do we know if someone's performing healing or actively healing? And I'd love to hear if anyone has ideas in the chat, but I wanted to hear your idea. I have a theory, but do you want to go?
No, you go first.
Okay, I will. I think that there's like you can be broken or like not healing, or it's like there's too much to heal from. You can be working on things, healing. You might be, I'm already healed, or you have nothing to heal from. And I think ideally we are fluctuating and like kind of going through all of those phases in no particular order throughout life. When we are stuck on no, I am an unhealed person and I like and getting attached like that's who I am and it becomes this personality trait, that's when I get concerned of like that can be performative, but so can being like I'm on a healing journey and I'm always going to be on this healing journey and like that being like the number one trait about you.
Mhm.
And also or I have nothing to heal from, I'm perfectly fine can also, it's like those are all to me performative
Mhm.
healing.
Yeah.
What do
I
you think?
completely agree because honestly, like, I know that this is like opinion and belief systems and stuff like that. So if people disagree, please feel free to chime in.
Yes, yes, yes.
We're completely open to that. But whenever someone says like, "Well, my work here is done. I don't really have anything to heal from. It kind of sounds to me like I don't have any psychological goals, or I don't have any, like, this time that I have on earth is complete. Like, kind of like, well, you're still here, so there must be more to move through. I have an aunt who's in her 80s, and we got close in the past like 5 years. Perfect timing. And she's always telling me, like, oh, Jenny, you do so much with Ayurveda, you do so much with astrology and all this stuff. And she's like, it's too late for me to think about any of that, though. And I'm like, it's never too late. You're 80 something. Like, you're still here, though. You could still make decisions, even just tiny little things like, oh, I'm going to start eating protein in the morning instead of whatever, like, Lucky Charms. Like, no hate. I love Lucky Charms, but we all have the ability to make small adjustments, whether it's a small adjustment to a habit, a small adjustment to the way we frame things, even just dropping an adjective. Like, if you see yourself as like, I am the victim of da 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 da, or I am a trafficked individual, I am, a victim of childhood abuse, da, da, da. It's not saying those things didn't happen. It's saying that your essence exists outside of that as well. You exist and that exists. So It's not an either or, and we can focus over here a little bit and give yourself a little bit of freedom to breathe and feel, what would it be like if I was to drop those identities or those adjectives or that narrative that I always preface with.
I like that. I guess it's like, how are we open to nonlinear healing? Because it's like, so yes, our trauma shouldn't define us, but our healing shouldn't define us either. So how do we make sure, like, because I'm with you. It's like, maybe you're not ever permanently healed, or it's like done with the work, but how do you do the work without it turning into your identity? Where it's like, you're not focusing on the trauma piece, but it's almost like, it's almost detaching yourself from the trauma and like, I need to be over this, or it's like, I need to be focusing. It feels like a control situation as well.
Yeah. It feels too like a macro scale or a macro lens isn't as helpful as like zooming in. Honey bringing up triggers and the coping skills, as coping skills evolving over time, but also checking in on your triggers, because triggers are just showing you where there's healing available, where is there, work to be done if you so choose to engage it. So cueing in on a micro level, like, oh, today I got really annoyed when this person in traffic was like absent-minded and merged into my lane and could have caused an accident. And it's like, we project so much onto these different situations, and it's like, well, really, what was going on? Was it that person had the audacity to not look, and that's triggering you? And you're like, well, why do I always feel responsible for everything? Why is it so threatening to me when someone else isn't stepping into their responsibility? And yes, car accidents are very real. That is a dangerous situation. We're talking about triggers where you have a larger than necessary reaction to something that's going on.
And you can't control the triggers. And that's why I like that Honeybee said that about the coping skills, because it's more like, you're gonna be triggered, but the way you respond or react, like, will evolve ideally. That you can be aware of where it's coming from. I don't know. I just feel sometimes I'm aware of how much I've healed when something new comes up that I probably have to heal from, or like pain wise happens. And so, because then I'm noticing how I'm responding or able to move forward in that situation is a lot different. So it's like, my skills for coping have improved, or I'm not letting it bring up negative core beliefs about myself. But it's still, to some people that might be like counterproductive, because, or like counterintuitive, simply because it's like, oh, why would something bad be happening if you're healed? I'm like, because we're human and we're living and we'll still make mistakes. It's not oh, I'm healed, and so this will never happen to me again, or this will never come back up.
Yeah. And it's like, how quickly can you recognize it? You've heard of metacognition, like thinking about your thinking. So it's like, how quickly can you slip out of the trigger and kind of into that metacognitive state where you're like, ooh, that was a trigger. And I'm recognizing that it was a trigger much faster than in the past when I would ruminate on it and not quite be able to recognize what's happening in the situation. So now I see that it's a trigger and I can actually decide, have autonomy and decide, how am I going to do this? Am I going to sit with it and kind of like moan about it a little bit more? Sometimes we need to sit in that and really feel it, because feeling your feelings is part of healing, as much as I have tried to not do that step of it. You can't just intellectualize your way around things. But once you get into that state where you can think about things a little bit more rationally or with your reasonable mind, not just in an emotional state, you can then see what your decisions are in front of you. And there's also the idea of leaning into, I'm going to say, curiosity. It could just be because of my Gemini moon. Curiosity around, why am I feeling this way? What is this bringing up for me? What was actually being triggered here?
Yes. I think I heard this in like from a therapist before. It's like there you can put it in your picnic basket to like unpack before you respond. Just sit with it and see what's going on. I love what Honey said about I wonder framing it less as I'm healing to I'm growing could make it less of an identity. We're not just healing, we're growing. That's another way to frame it. So it's not your entire identity.
Yeah.
I think because I do feel like in I don't know if it's something in today's culture or why, but when we think about, oh, I'm healing, sometimes it can feel not like as an excuse, but if we have that broken arm, it's like it's just a permanent cast. And so we need to like almost nurture it. And then I feel like maybe growing gives me the image of you're going to like physical therapy, like you're strengthening your arm again. And it's like so that you can use it. And that feels more active than kind of like building life around the wound.
Yeah.
I don't know. Healing and growing are the same thing, but to me, saying I'm growing, like there's a balance of grace and like self-love, but because I love myself, I want to be better. I want to grow, not because I love myself. I have free like reign over being triggered by everything and I'm not responsible for my actions.
Yeah. That was one thing that I thought was like, it was a big game changer mentally. So I'm going to feel like when I was in this awful mental health situation, that might happen a lot today. So when I was at anorexic camp, which is when you're hospitalized for anorexia, it's actually just called impartial or inpatient hospitalization. I remember all of the other people and myself, we were all like, ooh, I don't want to talk about that. That's triggering, or ooh, you're triggering me. And that word was like, it was 2006. So it was like a big time for the word trigger. And I remember the practitioners or the therapists in charge all kind of like, were like, all right, everyone settle for a second, because we hear you that you're being triggered and you're going to be triggered. Like both are true. And we're trying to prepare you guys to leave the hospital and go out in the real world where there's going to be things triggering you all the time. So you need to get your resilience to being triggered up. We can't have a trigger-free housing situation. Like it's just not going to happen. And we all felt very like, what do you mean this isn't our safe space? But it's true. Like we needed that middle ground because we hadn't found a way to be resilient in the face of our triggers. We put ourselves in the hospital because of how we were dealing with our lack of control over these things that were coming up out in the world. So now we needed to not only develop healthier coping skills and hopefully some level of self-love, but also a resilience to being triggered, a way to pause in the moment, to really take account of what's going on and be in control of our reaction.
Yeah. No, I really like that. It also makes me think about like when we talk about being triggered, it's also those skills that we're developing or the strategies. I think about when we're in an astrology session, you might be giving someone strategies, but that those strategies might need to evolve as you grow, right?
Definitely. Like when someone's never journaled before, I'm like, just write anything, like conscious stream of thought, something like that. If someone has journaled before, they've had different routines around it, we might start talking about more intense journal prompts. We might start talking about like, well, this is specifically what's going on in your chart. why don't you jam on this prompt for a little while? And then as it evolves from there, we can say something like, okay, let's develop a ritual around the writing where like maybe you write a letter to someone who has hurt you, and then we're going to burn it, or then we're not going to mail it. We're going to read it. We're going to do some sort of ritual or routine around it in order to release that. So you can take that one skill to these next levels.
Yeah, and that ties back into what Honey was saying with like we're growing. And so it's just ideally, I think that's when you can kind of get stagnant in the healing, and also why intellectualizing experiences it can be so dangerous, because I remember things that happened in my childhood and I was able to read them like a script, and I was like, yeah, but I dealt with that, that's fine. And I remember talking with it someone, it's like as I got uncomfortable I would talk faster, and this therapist was like, how about you just sit with that for a second? I was like, the first thing out of my mouth was, I don't want to. And she's like, no, like just be quiet for a second and just sit. How does your body feel? But it's like I had been saying the same thing and being able to move on with my life for 10 years. And I'm like, what do you mean suddenly something new is coming up? But it's like I was able to stick to, well, this is how I've been coping and this has been working for me. And it's like working for me to feel okay, but is it really working for me to release this? And like where, okay, that might have worked for a while, but now like going deeper. And so I really like that idea of when we are open to growing, the way we heal or the way we use our strategies is really helpful to kind of keep you from falling into that performative healing. I think especially too with social media, I'm all for people using social media if that feels right for them to document their healing journeys. But because the social media is part of like your image, it's like really being really careful of like, is this still aligned with like what you need, and not getting attached to like what the audience wants, and, you know, truly performing.
I like that. And I like that you mentioned the therapist saying, like, where do you feel this in your body? Because that's a big other place that we can tell, like, are we actually healed from something? Well, where do we feel it in our body? And how has our body kind of kept the score? How has our body held on to that trauma? And has it manifested into a bigger issue? I see a lot of my clients from the adopted, trafficked, and displaced community that have chronic illness, especially autoimmune illnesses. They're starting to tie it to unresolved trauma or unresolved, you know, squashing things down, not speaking your truth, not living into your full potential, making yourself small so that other people can have their space and their control. And it's just this dysfunction, and the body starts to be like, this actually really isn't working for me. And it just sits there and manifests into something chronic rather than acute in the situation, acutely dealing with, oh, this is the trauma, I'm going to start moving through it and I'm going to come back to it and readdress it. If we say we're healed, or we don't need to deal with that, or, well, it's okay because this other person likes me better when I behave this way, or, oh, I don't want to upset the apple cart here, like all of that, that's actually can manifest as disease in the body if we're not addressing it in the mind.
Yeah, and it's almost like I like when you're talking about feeling in the body, one, that chronic, but it's like healing or the way it moves through your body. And so it might show up one area and then show up in another area. It's like I noticed once I was really sitting and working through, the more it would show up in my throat, and like your throat connects to grief and gratitude. Like, and so I'm like, but I couldn't get to the grief part until I was allowing myself to feel angry. And I'm
Yeah.
like, but I was blocking even getting to that point for a long time.
I love thinking, can I talk about your chart?
Sure.
Like the your moon Pluto opposition, like that's so perfect for it, because like the grief that Pluto was asking to be addressed, and the moon, the throat, Taurus is a affinity with the throat. It's like they were trying to get your attention in this very integrated way, like, hey, this is not working.
And Aquarius Saturn was squaring and being like, let's just lock it up for a second. Like, just
Oh, that's why astrology, like, really, of all things, I'm like, this is such a gift, because it really can explain things through this completely different lens. I had a very medical year last year after being on a very high horse about how I don't have any medical issues, and, you know, the universe was like, stop having an ego about it, Jenna, like, go right to what we're talking about. Is it
yeah.
an ego trip, or are you actually healed? I was like, I never get sick. I never have to go to the doctor, like all this stuff. And then the universe was like, boom, broken leg, boom, dermatitis, boom, Lyme disease, boom, you're getting an MRI for headaches all in 1 year. And I was like, I guess I need to stop saying that I don't get sick, because I've literally had so many insurance claims this year for physical health illnesses. But when I went to these appointments, some of them, yeah, my broken leg, there was something physical that needed to be done. But for the headaches, they couldn't figure out anything wrong. And that to me was a cue. It's like, yes, you're having these intense migraines that seem really alarming. However, it hasn't manifested yet into something concrete, some sort of physical illness, some sort of tangible, this is the sickness in your brain or whatever. So right now you have the opportunity to address this on a different level, on a spiritual level, on a behavioral level. What is it that isn't getting addressed, this is trying to get your attention? Hey, pay attention.
Yeah. And it's like with the ego situation of, you can still be someone who doesn't get sick, but you had this year where you were. It's like, where I think that's the thing. It's where we can kind of be like, oh, I never need help, or I'm always the one helping everyone else. That doesn't mean you're never not going to need to ask for help. And that's where we kind of set ourselves up for not failure, but just to have like a more of a clash or friction when we feel like we need more support, or we're a little bit more sensitive to something coming up.
Yeah, like the all or nothing is really what gets in our way. Yeah. Yeah. Like, oh, I'm a victim of trauma, therefore I will always be that. Yes. Or, oh, I healed that, so I'm good. Bye. Yeah. Either way, it's not going to be great. That's spiraling. I love how you and I both took it to a down direction.
I know.
Took it up. Yeah. Spiraling in either direction.
Yeah.
Yeah. Camille saying, I always refer to triggering events as my former self and my current self. That helps me identify with those times, but not as an identity as my current self.
I love that. And I love visualizing my past self. But I think too, when I first was trying to heal, I was holding my current self way too responsible for, it was almost like for the past self me, I felt like current self me needed to be farther along in their evolution or their healing, or it felt like it. And so there's a balance where I love thinking about the line of yourselves all coexisting, but thinking also about my future self helps, of my future self looking back at me now, 10 years from now. What does she think? What does she look like? For some reason, every time I envision her, she's wearing like real pants. I'm wearing real pants right now, but I just think like she looks like she has her stuff together, but she doesn't tell me what's going to happen. It's like, but I know it's going to be okay. It's like, I need to stop taking so much responsibility for being beyond human and not being able to, like, sometimes you are going to have road rage. Sometimes something that came up in the past is going to come up. It's like, we're all working together, all the different selves.
Yeah. And being honest with yourself about where you're at actually is going to help more than, like, you might think, oh, I'm going to feel cut down if I'm honest that like I flipped somebody off. Not that, but please don't flip anyone off in bed. It's bad vibes. But it's funny because I've still been really jamming on Orcus lately and like doing even more intense study into it. And I've been noticing Orcus. So Orcus being a trans-Neptunian object that it's considered like the anti-Pluto. Like if Pluto is this like hot and almost it wants control through relationships, or it wants this like annihilation through this death and rebirth cycle that honestly does have a lot to do with yourself and another, or the loss of another, or the gaining of another, or annihilating another. What Orcus is it's this cold energy that's about isolation or alienation, imprisonment, all of that kind of stuff. It's not the relational side of the pain and the wound that Pluto can bring. So when I was thinking about that, it was saying that like one of the low expressions of Orcus, if you have a strong Orcus placement, which I do, is projecting annihilation onto other people. And I realize sometimes I do that. When I see someone misbehaving in a way that triggers me, I'm like, oh, that person, they're going to end up in a car accident. We're back to road rage. And then I'm like, Jenna, now at this stage, I'm like, Jenna, are you wishing that on them? Stop imagining that that's what's going to happen and being angry at them. Like, however, am I bypassing that part of the darkness that is naturally coming up in me by saying, Jenna, don't even engage that thought. You're being negative. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that you can engage it. What do you think? Like,
I
yes?
think I think it's the highest path does engage it.
Because it's almost like I think that's where it can get performative. It's like mm, I've heard people are like focusing just on where how far they've come
Mhm.
or just focusing on how much more they have to do. And it's like, why can't we do both? Or it's like, I know I still have like more work to do, but I'm
Mhm.
really proud of myself and like what I've done.
Mm.
Like balance. It's like, because I think it can get really negative when or you're projecting when you're only focusing on you haven't like healed enough.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think that we forget how far we've grown. Like, everyone does, because 'cause we're so our minds, even the way they say, for every one negative thing you say about yourself, you need something like 10 positives to outdo it. So when something positive happens, we don't focus on it nearly as much as something negative. So when we heal from something, it's almost like we stop thinking about the negative thing, and we go right to, like, "Well, what's the next horrible thing that I haven't been able to overcome yet?"
Oh yeah, or it's just like now it's becomes almost we're at productivity and needing something to show for a checklist situation.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
feel like you have to be in your body. I actually kind of want to. I guess we can bring this into astrology, but I'm very airy, but I do have some water and earth in my chart as well. But I feel with healing to avoid it being performative,
Mm.
you gotta avoid it being too airy and too mental. And it's like you have to stay in your body.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know where I was going with that. So if you want to pick up.
It sounded great,
Yeah,
and
yes, it's just I don't know.
well, it's interesting to think about the axes too, because the opposite of air being fire, and fire being like this life-giving. So it's like if we spend too much time up here, we're not down here living our life. Kind of like the same as like if we get lost in our emotions, water to earth, then we're not actually getting anything done in a practical way. We're
Yeah.
feeling our feelings, but we need to actually build something from the insight that we're gaining.
Hmm.
Hi, Debbie. I see you. So Jill's admitting that Jill also has really bad road rage. So I feel less alone. Thank you, Jill. Although Jill has also never envisioned her future. Wow. Okay, so Jill didn't think Jill was going to be here now. Well, I'm glad you're here, not only at the live stream but here on Earth. That is good news. I'm kind of the same. I honestly my lucky number is 27 and I was like I'll never make it to my lucky number. And I remember being 27 and be like, "Well, look at me." And now I'm 39, so I've completely gone beyond 27. But it is kind of like uncharted territory out here when you don't think that you can't even imagine living that long, which is kind of the way it is for children. Like the whole idea of I'm going to live forever, but also anyone over 20 seems super old to me. Like that kind of cognitive dissonance around things. Yeah. I wonder if that influences the fact that we feel like, oh, I already dealt with that. That was in my childhood. Because back then we couldn't even imagine being the ages we are now. So is it harder to relate to the ages we were?
Mm, probably.
I think so.
Yeah.
And as your brain develops too. It's like I can't think like I thought when I was 15, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And bringing up when you brought up like having kids at the ages and it brings you back to then. My daughter's 15 now and I'm like, "Oh yeah, this is what it's like to be 15." Like you all kind of talk about this same kind of stuff with these you get really excited about certain
Mhm.
adjectives or certain experiences like it's all very interesting.
What's interesting too, you maybe when you were talking about like being different ages, I think um sometimes we force ourselves to perform healing, but we can avoid healing because we don't think that that's something worth healing from, or we don't feel like it's bad enough. And so
Mm,
it can be blocking. It's like where we're kind of judging, oh, it's not as bad as this, or we kind of get into this weird trauma Olympic situation. And it's like, oh, well, it just, my life didn't fall apart. But it's like, that might be the thing you need to heal from. And so just
Mhm.
not to block, like being curious about where are you getting triggers from? And just because something happened like when you were young, or it's like you've been through worse things since, doesn't mean that it's not worth like, taking a little look at.
I like that you brought up, um, yeah, it wasn't as bad as somebody else or something like that. Cause I think we do get a lot of those messages from society, from social media, as well as from our families. Like some families, it's like, oh, just get over it. If somebody, in your family caused you trauma, or if your family went through a collective trauma together, and there's different levels of depth and availability within the different members of the family psyche, and some people don't want to address it or simply can't
Yeah.
go to that level. So they're like, just let it go. So then there's this pressure from your family system to kind of not address your healing as deeply as would be necessary and beneficial.
Yeah. Can you project Jensen's
Yeah.
question? What about healing from past life trauma? How does that relate to different ages, or does it?
Mm. I mean, I think it does. I would need to pause and reflect if this is just a reflection on my own life or if it's actually applicable to others.
I mean, again, we're evolutionary astrologers, and just thinking about the past life trauma and that part of healing it is going towards the North Node.
Mhm.
It's not that's something new. It's like we're still going to have these habits. We're still going to have the strength from the past life as well. And it's almost like a use it or lose it situation where I think even if you do heal it at one point, it can come back up because you're really trying, like until you're no longer with us. I feel like that is going to be a theme that comes up throughout your life.
Mhm.
Personally, I have an eighth house Gemini South Node. And so I have to work, but luckily I have a Taurus moon in the eighth house as well. But I have to work really hard to not think about worst case scenario, or for the thinking, oh, it feels so good right now, and like waiting for the other shoe to drop. I still have those moments where I do feel at peace, or like, I'm like, everything's going to be fine. But it's like, if I don't work on that, then it's easily, or it's just like if something out of my control happens in life, because again, things like that happen, that past life memory or pattern kind of comes back up. I'm more aware of it as I get older because of the work that I've done. And so I'm able to address it, or like recognize it and like talk about it, or allow myself to feel that without letting it be what's true. But I don't know. I think that's easy to say with like an eighth house South Node for sure.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. The integration of the gifts of your South Node with that unforeseen, uncharted territory of the North Node, integrating that together in order to find ways to release what wasn't working or what isn't working or what hasn't been working. I think that's really what, where the density of evolutionary astrology comes in, that integration piece. I don't know which comment to go with next. Oh, Debbie did say, what if your North Node is in the basement of your chart? So you're moving from either ninth or 10th house, South Node, into that third or fourth house, North Node.
It makes me think that with your North Node in the basement of your chart, which mine is, I feel that yourself evolves. So mine's in the second house. So a lot of it's like proving myself to myself and just like having this self-confidence. And as who I am changes and shifts, or I take on different roles. What does that mean? What does self-worth, what are my resources actually, like what do I value, is going to change. And so it's going to just be another angle, kind of like we were talking about earlier with this upward or downward spiral situation of you
Mhm.
get to visit it at a different angle. And I think above the chart, it might be more external events happening that kind of challenge you. Like, let's say you have a ninth house North Node. And so different things, you might find a belief system that works, but then new things happen where it's about stretching your mind. And it's not about like, oh, you have this certainty and you're all good now.
You know what's so funny? You and I both have North Nodes that are below the horizon, and we were thinking of spiraling as going downward, and Jensen's above the horizon. So
Oh, right. So maybe
she's
like
going
a
up.
part of our like remedy is to go deep and inward. And also wonder if anyone who has a north node above the horizon, let us know. But does that mean healing, or that is it not easier, but is it something like going inward that's like we're more comfortable with or less comfortable because that's our north node was something new to us?
Yeah. Or just when you visualize healing as someone with a north node above the horizon, when we say the word spiral, do you think of the spiral as moving upward? Just
Mm-hmm.
because your north node giving you that brief little suggestion of like, yeah, you're moving up. Because
Yeah.
I'm still thinking about a little bit about what Debbie said. So, like, if you have a ninth or 10th house north node, south node, past life, you have a familiarity with being out in public, gathering information out in public, having experiences out in public, being seen by the public, whether it's the expansiveness of the ninth house or just the mission and being very present out in the world of the 10th house. So then to take that familiarity as well as possibly ease of being in those positions, and instead you're taking the wisdom from them and you're trying to pull that wisdom down into your root, into your values, into your core beliefs. So it's like you're integrating that energy in this sort of downward spiral. That's how it's going to get into yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, conical viruses where they like twist in and like get embedded. That's I don't know.
Okay.
Not that healing is a virus. It's actually the opposite. But, oh. All right. So where is North Node Aquarius on the horizon?
I think that's for Camille and Janae. And so that it's more like where in your birth chart is your north node, and y'all's is above. So yours is in the top.
Yeah. So
the horizon's your ascendant or your rising. We should have said that.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. Sometimes we go a little high level, but for Janae and Camille, if you guys both have north nodes that are above the horizon, because Kimber knows that you do, does that make sense?
So
when you think about healing as a spiral, does your mind naturally want that spiral moving upwards?
Mm-hmm. Like you heal going up or going in.
Yeah, because Janae said, I constantly think I've healed through so much 4 years post-separation and divorce, and then one random day I'm like, oh, fudge. There's way more than I realize that I need to look at, or a trigger that I didn't expect. That is so, yeah, triggers that we don't expect coming up. Because I'm almost 6 years post-divorce, and yeah, every so often I'm like, oh, that used to happen, or that is a behavior that I had during a dysfunctional relationship in my past. And when you touch into that, it can quickly feel like, oh man, I haven't grown at all. But then it's like, no. I spend a lot of time not doing that too.
Yeah. And I feel like, honestly, as you get farther away or you do the work, maybe your triggers get fewer and farther, like there's farther apart. And so they can kind of rub you harder because you're like, oh, I thought I was over this, or there's shame and feeling like you're regressing. And I'm like, is that a regression? No. But I do have something I want to ask everyone about. We haven't talked about this side of performative healing, but what about people who say they don't have anything to heal from? One, do we think that's possible? Thank you, Jill.
Yeah. See, it's interesting because part of me is like, okay, so I signed up to do EMDR in 2021. And I remember going, and my EMDR therapist was great. And she was like, you've done so much therapy. Like, let's jump right in. Like, and there were epiphanies that were coming, but it was almost like these little, like, that like the epiphanies weren't like earth shattering the way that other people had described EMDR to be. So I was like, I guess I don't really need this anymore. And so my therapist agreed with me and graduated me. And now I feel like even the things that I was getting epiphanies and clarity on back then, I am now getting such deeper epiphanies and clarities on those same topics. So maybe it's less about, oh, I'm completely healed, Or it's more like, hey, I'm all caught up on my schoolwork or my healing work to this point. I need to wait to the next level to open up for me. I need
Yeah.
to wait for that next transit.
Yes, because it's there was a point when I first started learning astrology that I was like, oh, I'm learning so much. I'm learning everything. And then it's almost like then there was this tipping point where I know so much and I'm just so aware of, oh, there's so much more depth and things like, and it's honestly the same of just there's a point where you might hit where it's like this is where you're ready to heal or like work through, and then later maybe under a different transit or just later in life after other experiences you can just engage with it differently. And I love, so mostly everyone's saying it's impossible to not have anything to heal from. um and I agree, but we do know some people who don't feel this way, like and so it sounds like from what I'm seeing in the chat that we see that kind of as a block for that person. And I really like what Debbie's saying of unless you live under a rock or haven't evolved. And I feel like maybe if you haven't evolved or you're staying in the same spot, then maybe you do feel that you don't have anything to heal from. But that is coming from that point of view. It's like coming from not living.
I wonder if we can think about it too as like as another axis. So like, are you truly completely healed and in this contented, connectedness with the universe, with everyone else? You're in, and I'm trying to describe Pisces without describing Pisces. Or are you completely in that Piscean realm, or is there Virgo available? Is there work that matters available? And the highest path is the integration of both. Yes, you might be very healed from some very deep and impactful traumas that others might have said that that's more than a lifetime of work to heal. Well, you've done it. So there's more to be done. Yes, be grateful that you don't have these wounds that other people have. You're not still handicapped by your trauma, but at the same time, there's always going to be more available.
Yeah. No, I feel like we can be aware, but it's the integration is what's going to be ever going. It's like integration is a practice. It's something you continue to do, and you can always integrate something deeper. I'm looking at all the comments in the chat.
There's a lot. I think too that there's something to be said about like taking breaks.
Yes.
Yeah. So if somebody says like they don't have anything to heal from, sometimes I'm like, ooh, are you on a much deserved break right now? Like, did you just do something so exhausting or go through some trial or tribulation, even if you haven't truly healed from it, and you just need a break right now? Because I think people that have strong Scorpio, which Kimber, you and I both have, so we're representing Scorpio in a big way. Scorpio can have this kind of pitfall of staring into the darkness too much and not disengaging from that psychoanalysis or that deep shadow work, and running itself ragged through it instead of saying like, hey, everything in doses. We also need the opposite of Scorpio, Taurus. We also need comfort, time to heal, time to just be, time to be in our primal animalistic knowing rather than always up here in our psychoanalysis.
Yeah, I like that. I think that the break thing makes sense to me. And it's also, or it reminds me when someone's saying like, I'm just tired. And even if they're struggling with like the healing part, but I feel like that is showing self-reflection, or I need a break, or I need to step away from this. Being able to articulate it in that way is still engaging, if that makes, it's not avoiding. And I think sometimes even if you're just focusing on, I'm always going to be healing and I'm healing, and look how much I'm doing. And it's just, what is the motive? Can be, are we doing it to kind of numb or to avoid or to protect a certain image of ourselves? That's when we get into the performative area. But it's just, how are we really just allowing ourselves to engage in different ways throughout?
And in the most effective ways, effective and efficient ways. Because sometimes when we don't address our trauma, we touched on this earlier, it can manifest in the body as chronic illness. So it's like, would you rather be addressing a disease or a chronic illness, or would you rather be addressing the root cause, which actually isn't even physical to begin with?
Yes. And I love that Jensen said the the resting people do, to me, is still working on something. That's part of the healing.
Yeah, definitely. You're recharging.
Again, growing in how you are, like, what are your strategies looking like, allowing them to evolve and grow.
Yeah.
Um, because I don't know, I just think there's also this fascination in society with, not needing a lot. And I think too, there's some pride in like not having something to heal from. Like, look how whole I am. Like, I'm good.
Yeah.
But I think really being curious, if you're someone who feels that way, I don't want anyone, it's not about like you need to find a wound or you have to have wounds. I don't, because again, that can also be an issue of like using, like, I don't want anyone to be super attached to one specific identity. I want us to be humans who are free to like evolve and to take up different shapes of space throughout our lives. So that's the thing. It's just like, if there's this block where that's coming up, why?
Yeah. Getting curious again.
Yeah.
It's interesting to think about it too with the idea of taking breaks as, are we being in reality about it? Like, hey, I need a break from this. Or are we having like an illusion of clarity where it's like, oh, I'm completely healed and there's no more work to do, which, as much as we were talking about Pisces, Virgo, this is the other two mutable signs of Sagittarius and Gemini, like the illusion of clarity with Sagittarius. And turning our back from more Gemini evidence, from more curious engagement with like, well, am I really? Like, let me think about this. Well, let me wonder about that large reaction I had to that very small problem. Oh, that was a trigger. Oh, that actually points to something in me that can be worked on, an opportunity for healing.
Yeah.
Debbie saying, I like this a lot. It's kind of like the natural wheel. We have Libra on the sun setting point with the Aries locked at rising. And it is the line, the boundary between light and dark. And that is saying that we have the balance between light and dark because it's unescapable for us to not. Like, you have to have the both and of shadow as well as light, of work and healing as well as the break. So,
Which is, so we're going to be talking about Ceres the rest of March, and we're talking about like the cyclical grief or just like attachment, letting go, life and death, and just seeing this part of like the healing and not healing. It just, yes, like things are supposed to be cyclical.
I love what Janae, is that
Janae.
Janae said. I feel like I'm so good and I hope others can get to this place, but I will never feel like I'm done healing. That just reminds me of Chiron, not to always bring up Chiron, but feeling like you're so healed and feeling like you can hope others get to this place. It's like you've become the wounded healer. You're helping impart healing on others who had similar wounds, and your growth, your healing journey, your progress imparts, at least energetically, on other people with similar wounds so that they can also start on their journey.
And that goes with Debbie saying like we're whole with the bad, the good, the ugly. Like, it's the whole journey. It's I think in internal family systems therapy, they talk about the parts of yourself. It's like having all the parts, and you don't want to over identify with just like one big part, because we're complex human beings, where you can be, as Janae says, like so good and like feeling at peace and also working on things and working through things.
Yeah.
And I do like what Jill just said.
Yeah. Yeah.
Saturn, so very open and honest. She's sick of some of these cycles. So happy she has the strength, growth, healing to not continue some of them.
Yeah, and it's so real to just be like, I'm sick of this. We're also in eclipse season with Mercury retrograde, so right now is the perfect time to be sick of everything because a lot is coming to the table right now.
And something, I think we were talking about like the cyclical spiral thing earlier, thinking about transits, especially when they hit parts of your nodal story or the past life things that you're working through. Sometimes the strategies you were using that were working great are no longer, like, they don't serve you anymore. And whether you are, so if you're not taking a step back and thinking, oh, how can I evolve this? The transits will kind of give you some invitations and opportunities. Maybe they don't always feel like warm invitations, to actually think about it and to kind of think, okay, this is actually not going to work now. What can I do here? And so I
Mm-hmm.
really love that idea of just the eclipse will also bring up the where how am I doing with my past life pattern, and then also your like even or this current life, because there's going to be similarities as well of just what have I been avoiding or what have I been really engaging with, what do I need a break from.
Mm. Yeah, there's a lot of wisdom in eclipse charts that it can help every single person, even just looking at the eclipse without your chart and seeing the different like key points, like what degrees are they at, what are the nodes in, what exactly, like right now we have a Virgo south node, what are we trying to release, what Virgoan issue, behavior, thought, any pattern are we trying to release, and maybe bring something in that's a little bit more Piscean to balance it out, to fill in that void.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if it's hitting something in your chart, then there's definitely something worth, releasing. Murder. I'm glad that Jill is moving through her shadows. Very shadowy. Yeah, I was looking at a lecture on eclipses, and the speaker was saying that the first planet to cross where the eclipse happened after, and like noting that as maybe like the theme bringer or as an emphasized tool. So right now, the first that crossed was Mars for this last eclipse.
Hmm.
So thinking like, how can I embody Mars in order to bring forward whatever it was that this eclipse was trying to move through with me? So Mars, assertive action, motivation, taking that risk, developing courage,
Yep.
whatever it is, it's going to take a little extra dose of that martial courage to do what this eclipse really was hoping for each and every one of us to do.
I love that.
But that might be why this eclipse season feels extra, because Mars is a little extra. It's, the traditional malefic. So, there's, as much as we are evolutionary astrologers, so we don't frame things in this kind of doomsday way that traditional astrology sometimes edges towards, we still can honor the fact that Mars is a difficult planet and Mars energy can be difficult to work with. So as everyone on the planet is trying to figure out how to Mars right now, we're having large Mars expressions, we're having wars breaking out, like it's crazy out there. But then we're also having people like cutting me off in traffic, and then me getting road rage, like that's all Mars too. So
Yeah. And we have more, I think that's also just with like integrating and working on the planets of we all have free will, and which means other people around us have free will. We all have a different relationship with Mars before that happened. So our discomfort or comfort with Mars and how to use it will play into that as well, of like how we feel comfortable to respond.
yeah, like for instance, my Mars is in Capricorn and it's in the 10th house. Capricorn can have a lot to do with building things, but it can also have to do with rules. It can have to do with kind of that old curmudgeon-y. So like say instead of flipping the guy off in traffic, I instead decided to go down to my local town hall and talk to them about instituting new regulations or slower speeds, or, adding something to help regulate things. That feels very like Mars and Capricorn. I'm going to lead the change with this. But my negative expression could have been, and I didn't do this, my kids were in the car, as well as my God was watching, flipping them off. That's kind of like Mars unhinged. So, figuring it out for yourself. What would be the best way for me to Mars right now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Whew. That
That
flew
was,
by.
yeah, I did. Like, did we get through everything that we wanted to get through?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. We did
Okay.
really well. Do you want to talk about the rest of the month? I know.
Yes. So we are going to be talking about Ceres, which is a dwarf planet. And we're going to also be talking about the myth that is connected to Ceres around Demeter and Persephone. And that this is the nourishing mother, but also the grieving mother myth I'm very excited about. But what does Ceres in your natal chart mean? What does transiting Ceres mean? And just kind of working through some other existential topics related to it. So some of it's going to be grief, but just because we're transitioning from winter to spring, and how sometimes that doesn't, it's not just like a switch immediately. I'm just so excited. I'm going to be super geeky about Ceres. So before next week, I highly recommend, if you don't already know where Ceres is in your birth chart, check it out. So that way, if you have any questions, you can bring them. But we might be sharing some charts later on in the month to kind of show what Ceres moving through the sky does. Do you want to say anything else, Jenna?
I'm just really excited too. Ceres is prominent in my chart as well as Kimber's, so I
Yeah,
feel like we
not
have
to word vomit about. Like I'm like I just see myself cheesing about her.
she's so special. No,
Yeah.
I'm very excited for this. And I'm excited to dive into the myth too, because I think a lot of people would benefit from hearing the nuance behind the mythology of Ceres. So
It helps you really understand what it represents. But great.
amazing. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us in the chat. This was a very active day. We appreciate it, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.